the hidden value of Napoleon's swords and guns. On May 5, 1821, on the remote island of Saint Helena, the most feared man in Europe died in exile. But more than 2 centuries later, something extraordinary remains. Not his empire, not his army, but his weapons sold for millions. Why? To understand the staggering value of Napoleon's weapons, we must begin with the man himself, Napoleon Bonaparte. Born in 1769 in Corsica, Napoleon rose from a relatively obscure artillery officer to become Emperor of France in 1804. His rise was not just rapid, it was unprecedented. And his weapons were never just tools of war. They were symbols of power. Weapons as symbols of authority. Napoleon's swords were often crafted not for battle, but for ceremony. Take, for example, the ornate sword made for his coronation as emperor in 1804. This was not a battlefield weapon. It was a masterpiece gold, ivory, and intricate engravings. It was designed to communicate one thing: absolute authority. During the coronation of Napoleon, Napoleon crowned himself an act that shocked Europe. The sword at his side reinforced that message. He did not inherit power, he seized it. That moment alone transforms any object linked to it into a historical artifact of immense importance. Weapons that witnessed history. Napoleon's firearms tell a different story. Unlike ceremonial swords, his pistols were often practical and sometimes present during critical moments. One of the most famous examples is the pair of pistols Napoleon reportedly carried during his first abdication in 1814. After the disastrous defeat in the War of the Sixth Coalition, Napoleon was forced to step down. According to historical accounts, he even attempted suicide using poison, but survived. The pistols he carried during that period became deeply symbolic. They represent not victory, but the collapse of an empire. The power of provenance. In the world of historical artifacts, one word matters more than anything else: provenance. This means documented proof of ownership and authenticity. Napoleon's weapons are not just old, they are traceable. Many of them have well-documented histories, passed down through generations, often preserved in royal collections or museums. For example, a gold-inlaid sword attributed to Napoleon sold at auction in 2007 for over 4.8 million euros. Why so high? Because experts could verify its origin, its craftsmanship, and its connection to Napoleon himself. Without provenance, it's just an antique. With provenance, it becomes a piece of history. Craftsmanship and materials. Napoleon's weapons were often made by the finest artisans of the time. French gunsmiths and sword makers in the late 18th and early 19th centuries were among the best in Europe. Many of Napoleon's swords feature gold and silver inlays, engraved imperial symbols, ivory or mother-of-pearl handles. These were not mass-produced items. They were commissioned works of art. Even without Napoleon's name attached, such craftsmanship would already be valuable. With his name, the value multiplies. The myth and the man. Over time, Napoleon became more than a historical figure. He became a legend. His campaigns from Italy to Egypt to Russia reshaped Europe. His legal reforms, especially the Napoleonic Code, still influence modern law. This larger-than-life legacy adds emotional value to his possessions. Collectors are not just buying a sword, they are buying a connection to a man who changed the course of history. The modern auction market. In recent decades, Napoleon-related artifacts have consistently fetched high prices at auctions. In 2021, one of his bicorn hats sold for nearly 1.9 million euros. Weapons often reach even higher values. Why? Because supply is extremely limited. Napoleon owned only a finite number of personal weapons. Each one is unique, each one is irreplaceable. And demand continues to grow, especially among private collectors, museums, and institutions. Authenticity versus legend. However, not every Napoleon sword is genuine. The market is filled with replicas and misattributed items. Historians and experts rely on archival records, metallurgical analysis, provenance documentation. Only a small fraction of items can be definitively linked to Napoleon. This scarcity increases the value of those that can. Weapons as time capsules. Ultimately, Napoleon's swords and guns are valuable because they are time capsules. They carry the weight of the French Revolution, the rise of an empire, the fall at Battle of Waterloo. Each scratch, each engraving, each detail tells a story. And that story is not fictional. It is history preserved in steel and gold. Napoleon once said, "Glory is fleeting, but obscurity is forever." Yet more than 200 years later, his empire is gone. But his weapons still command millions. Because in the end, history doesn't just remember great men, it remembers what they left behind.